Have you ever noticed how we often overestimate what we can achieve in a week, yet underestimate what can happen in 6 months of steady effort? The truth is, transformation is never sudden. It's not one decision, one workout, one business idea, or one late night of studying. Real change is the result of showing up consistently, even when progress feels invisible. Consistency is not glamorous. It's the discipline of repeating simple actions every single day, even when no one applauds. But here's the paradox: while it feels small in the moment, those small actions compound into massive results. Think about a seed planted in the soil. For months, there's no sign of growth above ground. You water it, nurture it, and doubt if it's even alive. But beneath the surface, roots are expanding, foundations are being built, and then one day it breaks through. Your consistency has created something unstoppable. The same applies to your health, your career, your relationships, or your personal growth. 6 months of consistency in any area of life is long enough to build habits, create momentum, and establish a new identity. You won't just do different things, you'll become a different person. So here's the challenge: choose one thing, one goal, one habit, one area you know can change your life. Commit to it with full focus for 6 months. Block out the noise of quick fixes and overnight success stories. Show up imperfectly but persistently, because in 6 months, you won't just see results, you'll realize the person you're becoming is someone you once thought was impossible. The question is, will you give yourself the gift of consistency long enough to see who you could truly be? 5 keynotes of the speech: transformation is built, not instant. True change is the outcome of consistent effort over time, not single grand gestures. Small actions compound daily habits, though invisible at first, accumulate into powerful long-term results. Consistency builds identity. 6 months of showing up reshapes who you are, not just what you do. Focus on one thing, choose a single goal or habit, and commit fully for 6 months to maximize growth. Consistency creates unstoppable momentum. With time, persistence transforms effort into lasting change. We live in a world that is constantly searching for speed. We want faster results, quicker answers, and immediate success. When we set a goal, we often expect to see dramatic change overnight, as if transformation should be instant simply because we decided to pursue it. But the reality is very different. Transformation is never a product of sudden change. It is always built step by step over time. The illusion of instant change often leads us to disappointment because the expectations we place on ourselves are unrealistic. We believe that one intense day at the gym will make us fit, or one long night of studying will make us an expert, or one burst of energy into a new project will make it successful. But the truth is, transformation doesn't respect impatience. It only responds to consistency and effort sustained over time. Consider the process of learning a new skill. On the first day, progress feels clumsy. You make mistakes, you forget steps, and you doubt yourself. But if you keep showing up, each day you improve slightly, almost invisibly. You don't notice it at first because change rarely announces itself loudly. It whispers: a new understanding here, a smoother attempt there, a tiny breakthrough that only becomes meaningful when it accumulates over weeks and months. Then, one day, you look back and realize how far you've come. What felt impossible at the beginning has now become natural. That is transformation. It is built gradually, like bricks stacking one upon another, until suddenly you realize you have built a wall strong enough to stand on its own. When people expect instant change, they set themselves up for frustration. They abandon the process too early, believing their efforts are wasted simply because the outcome isn't visible yet. But if you shift your perspective to see transformation as a process of construction, you begin to understand that each small effort matters. Just as a building cannot stand on its foundation, your personal growth cannot exist without the slow, steady work that feels invisible at first. The workouts where nothing seems to change, the books you read where only a small piece of information sticks, the quiet mornings where you push yourself to stay disciplined even though nobody notices. These are the foundation stones. They are not wasted, they're essential. Think of how nature itself works. A tree doesn't appear the moment a seed touches the soil. For months, there is no visible sign of life above ground. But under the surface, roots are spreading, preparing for the strength the tree will one day need. Without that unseen stage of growth, the tree would never survive the storms to come. In the same way, the early stages of any personal transformation are often invisible. You may not see the results in the mirror or in your achievements, but inside you are laying the roots of resilience, discipline, and persistence. These qualities will eventually support the visible success that others will admire. Transformation also requires patience with failure. Instant change gives us no room to stumble, but real growth demands it. When you're building something, you make mistakes, you misjudge, you fall short. Yet each failure adds to your understanding and becomes part of the process. The difference between those who transform and those who give up is not talent or intelligence. It's the willingness to keep building even when progress is slow and setbacks feel discouraging. The recognition that transformation is built, not instant, allows you to embrace failure as part of the architecture of growth rather than as a reason to quit. The beauty of this truth is that it makes transformation accessible to anyone. If change were instant, it would belong only to the few who happen to be gifted or lucky. But because transformation is built over time, it belongs to those who are willing to work, to persist, and to stay consistent. 6 months may feel like a long time, but in the grand scheme of life, it is a short investment that can redefine your future. Every day you show up, even in small ways, you are placing another brick in the structure of your transformation. You may not notice the building rising day to day, but eventually you will stand back and see something remarkable that you created with your own persistence. So when you commit to change, resist the temptation to demand instant results. Instead, focus on building. Every effort, every repetition, every step taken adds to the structure. And though you may not see the transformation immediately, one day you will wake up and realize you are living inside the very future you once dreamed of. That is the power of building, not rushing. That is the reality of transformation. We often imagine that the biggest changes in life come from massive efforts, dramatic decisions, or extraordinary moments. We think that success requires something heroic, a bold leap that separates us from everyone else. But when you look closer at how people truly grow, achieve, and transform their lives, you realize that greatness is rarely the result of one monumental act. Instead, it comes from the small, almost invisible actions repeated over time that compound into something extraordinary. Small actions, when stacked consistently, become powerful enough to change the trajectory of your entire life. The problem is, small actions rarely feel significant in the moment. Reading 5 pages of a book today doesn't make you wise. Going for a 10-minute walk doesn't make you fit. Saving a small amount of money doesn't make you financially free. And because these small actions don't give immediate results, many people underestimate their power. They dismiss them as insignificant or too easy to matter. But the truth is, change doesn't happen because of the size of the action. It happens because of the consistency of the action. The repetition is what creates momentum, and the momentum is what creates transformation. Think of how compound interest works in finance. If you save and invest a little bit each day, it doesn't seem like much at first. The growth is barely visible in the beginning. But as time passes, those small deposits multiply. Interest grows on interest, and eventually the amount becomes massive. The same principle applies to your habits and daily behaviors. Every time you take a small step toward your goal, you are making a deposit into the account of your future. Alone, one deposit may not matter, but added together, compounded daily, the results become undeniable. Small actions also rewire your identity. When you choose to act consistently, even in small ways, you start to see yourself differently. For example, when you sit down and write 1 page every day, you may not have a book in a week or even in a month, but you start to believe, I am a writer. When you choose to exercise even briefly every day, you begin to feel like I am a healthy person. These small signals you send to yourself gradually shift your identity, and once your identity changes, your behavior follows more naturally. This is why small actions are far more sustainable than occasional bursts of big effort. They become part of who you are, not just something you do. Consider how this works in relationships. Saying a kind word to a loved one each day, listening attentively, or making small gestures of care may not feel like much at the moment. But compounded over months and years, these tiny actions build trust, deepen love, and create bonds that are unshackable. On the other hand, neglecting small actions has a compounding effect as well. Skipping meaningful conversations, ignoring small acts of kindness, or allowing small frustrations to go unaddressed may not ruin a relationship in a day, but over time, they erode it until it breaks. The compounding effect works in both directions, positive or negative, depending on the small actions you choose each day. The challenge is that we are often impatient. We want to see the results of our small actions immediately, and when they don't show up, we give up. But that's like planting seeds and then digging them up each morning to see if they've grown. Growth is happening beneath the surface, silently and invisibly, even when you can't measure it in the moment. The walk you take today adds to the walk you took yesterday. The words you write today build on the words you wrote last week. The money you save today compounds with the money you saved last month. Eventually, the invisible becomes visible, and the small becomes significant. What makes small actions so powerful is that they are accessible to everyone. You don't need extraordinary talent, massive resources, or perfect conditions to start. Anyone can read a few pages, take a short walk, save a little money, or practice a small skill each day. Success, therefore, isn't reserved for the extraordinary. It belongs to those who understand the compounding effect of small actions and are patient enough to stay with them long enough to see the results. The difference between people who achieve their goals and those who don't is not usually intelligence, luck, or opportunity. It is the willingness to do the small, simple things every day, even when they seem to make no difference. Over 6 months, those actions transform into habits. Over a year, those habits transform into character. And over a lifetime, they define your destiny. The compounding effect of small actions is not just a principle. It is the foundation of lasting change. When we think about change, most people focus on outcomes. They want to lose weight, build a business, learn a new skill, or improve their relationships. But beneath every outcome lies something far more powerful than the result itself, the identity we build along the way. Outcomes are what we achieve, but identity is who we become. And the bridge between where we are now and the identity we want to embrace is built through consistency. Every time you show up, even in the smallest way, you cast a vote for the kind of person you're becoming. Over time, these votes accumulate and your actions begin to define your identity. Think about how we often label ourselves. We say, I'm not a morning person, or I'm not good with money, or I've never been disciplined. These identities are not written in stone. They are stories we tell ourselves based on our past patterns of behavior. But identity is not fixed. It is flexible, and consistency is the tool we use to rewrite that story. When you consistently choose to wake up early, even if it's just 15 minutes earlier than before, you begin to challenge the belief that you are not a morning person. When you consistently track your spending or save a small amount of money, you begin to shift the story that you're careless with finances. Slowly, through repetition, you start to see yourself differently. The reason consistency builds identity is because actions speak louder than intentions. Anyone can say they want to be disciplined, but only the daily repetition of disciplined behavior makes that true. Anyone can say they want to be healthy, but showing up for daily exercise and making mindful choices with food is what builds the identity of a healthy person. Identity is not declared, it is demonstrated, and demonstration requires consistency. Consider someone who wants to become a writer. They might have the dream of publishing a book, but that dream will remain an illusion until they sit down every day and write, even if it's only a paragraph. At first, they may not feel like a writer at all. Doubt will whisper that they're just pretending. But with each day they consistently write, they reinforce the message, I am a writer. 6 months later, the identity feels natural, not forced, because their actions have aligned with their desired self-image. What began as effort eventually becomes evidence, and the evidence reshapes the way they see themselves. This is why consistency is so powerful. It doesn't just create results, it creates belief. Every time you act in alignment with the person you want to become, you strengthen your conviction that this identity belongs to you. The opposite is also true. Inconsistency weakens identity. If you want to be someone who values health but only exercise sporadically, your actions never provide enough proof to convince yourself that you truly embody that identity. This is why people often feel stuck in cycles of frustration. They want the identity but avoid the consistency required to support it. The good news is that you don't need massive, dramatic effort to build identity. Small, repeatable actions are enough. Think of brushing your teeth. It's a small act, but because it's consistent, you don't question whether you are a person who cares about oral hygiene. You just know you are. The same principle applies to every other area of life. If you meditate for 5 minutes daily, you become someone who values mindfulness. If you read a few pages every night, you become someone who loves learning. If you reach out to loved ones regularly, you become someone who nurtures relationships. It's not the size of the act that matters, but the consistency of it. Another important truth about identity is that it lasts longer than outcomes. You might reach a fitness goal, but if your identity remains unchanged, you risk slipping back into old habits. However, if you see yourself as someone who lives a healthy lifestyle, the behavior sustains itself naturally, even after the original goal is met. That's the difference between temporary change and lasting transformation. Goals give you something to aim at, but identity ensures that the change becomes permanent. Consistency also removes the pressure of perfection. You don't have to get it right every time. Missing a day doesn't erase your progress. What matters is the pattern you establish, not the occasional slip. When you view your actions as part of building identity, you understand that each choice is a chance to reinforce who you are. Even a small step in the right direction strengthens the foundation of your identity. Over 6 months, those repeated steps reshape not just your habits, but your sense of self. Ultimately, the most important transformation you can experience is not achieving a particular result, but becoming a different person. Someone stronger, more disciplined, more resilient, more aligned with the life you want to live. And that shift only happens through consistency. Every repeated action is like laying a brick. One brick seems insignificant, but laid day after day, it eventually becomes a wall. And that wall is your identity, solid, unshakable, and built entirely by the consistency of your actions. One of the greatest challenges in today's world is not a lack of opportunity, but an excess of it. Everywhere we look, there are options, distractions, and endless promises of quick success. We live in an environment that constantly encourages us to do more, chase more, and spread ourselves thin across countless goals and ambitions. But the irony is, the more we divide our attention, the less progress we actually make. True transformation rarely comes from trying to master everything at once. It comes from choosing one thing that matters deeply and committing to it with full focus. When you pour your energy into one direction, you create momentum powerful enough to change your life. The temptation to multitask is strong because it feels productive. Starting several projects, picking up multiple habits, or juggling many goals gives us the illusion of progress. But real progress isn't measured by how many things we start. It's measured by how many things we finish and how deeply we commit. If you imagine your energy as sunlight, multitasking spreads that light thin, warming everything but igniting nothing. But when you focus that light into a single beam, like a magnifying glass, it has the power to set something on fire. That is what happens when you focus on one thing. You transform scattered effort into concentrated power. Choosing one thing does not mean you ignore every other area of your life. It means you recognize that mastery requires depth, and depth can only be reached through sustained focus. If you try to improve your health, build a career, learn a new language, and start a side business all at the same time, each area will compete for your attention, and progress will feel painfully slow. But if you choose one, just one, to give your best energy for 6 months, the transformation will be visible and measurable. Once that habit or goal is established, you can move on to the next. This sequential focus builds momentum, allowing each success to create a foundation for the next one. There's also a psychological benefit to focusing on one thing. It simplifies decision making. When you're juggling multiple goals, every day feels like a battle of choices. Should I work out, study, or work on my project first? Should I read, meditate, or build my side hustle? That constant decision fatigue drains your willpower. But when you commit to one clear priority, you remove the noise. You know where your energy goes, and that clarity makes it easier to stay consistent. Simplicity, not complexity, is what sustains long-term discipline. Focusing on one thing also forces you to confront yourself more honestly. When your attention is scattered, it's easy to hide behind excuses. If you fail to make progress, you can always say, I was busy with other goals. But when you choose one thing and dedicate yourself fully to it, you remove the safety net. Your progress, or lack of it, reflects your commitment. This accountability can feel uncomfortable, but it is exactly what pushes you to grow. By narrowing your focus, you expose yourself to the discipline and persistence required to build real change. History offers countless examples of the power of singular focus. Great inventors, artists, athletes, and leaders rarely spread themselves across dozens of pursuits. They picked one path, dedicated themselves to it relentlessly, and through that focus, they achieved extraordinary results. Their success wasn't because they had more time or talent. It was because they had clarity. They understood the principle that depth creates impact. And the same principle applies in our personal lives. You don't need to be extraordinary. You just need to focus deeply on one direction long enough to create meaningful change. The truth is, transformation doesn't require complexity. It requires commitment. You don't have to solve every area of your life at once. You only need to choose one thing, the one thing that, if improved, would have the greatest impact on your future. For some, that might be health, because better energy fuels everything else. For others, it might be building a skill, because it opens doors to new opportunities. For another, it might be mastering discipline in one small daily habit, because that discipline spills into every other area of life. The key is not which thing you choose, but that you choose one and give it your full focus for 6 months. What happens over time is remarkable. That singular focus builds momentum, and momentum has a ripple effect. When you transform one area of your life, it often influences others naturally. If you focus on health, you gain energy that improves your work. If you focus on learning, you build confidence that strengthens your relationships. If you focus on discipline, it becomes a foundation for every other goal. By doing one thing with full dedication, you set off a chain reaction that eventually elevates multiple areas of your life. But it begins with focus, not division. So, while the world may tempt you to chase 10 goals at once, resist the urge. Progress is not about doing everything. It is about doing the right thing consistently until it changes you. And that begins by making the courageous choice to focus on one thing. Momentum is one of the most powerful forces in human progress, yet it cannot be purchased, borrowed, or instantly created. It is built slowly, almost invisibly, through consistency. Each time you show up and take a step forward, even a small one, you add weight to the wheel of progress. At first, pushing that wheel feels heavy. It barely moves. You wonder if your effort matters. But with every push, the wheel begins to turn more smoothly. And then something almost magical happens. The effort that once felt exhausting begins to feel natural, and progress becomes easier than it was before. This is the power of momentum, and it belongs to those who commit to showing up consistently. In the beginning of any journey, the hardest part is starting. When you take on a new habit or goal, everything feels uphill. You fight your doubts, your distractions, and the temptation to quit. The results are invisible, and the temptation to abandon the effort is strong. But every small action compounds, and those repetitions begin to create rhythm. Rhythm creates familiarity, and familiarity builds confidence. Suddenly, the things that once required effort become automatic, and the habit begins to carry you forward. That shift from effort to ease is the birth of momentum. Momentum is powerful because it doesn't just accelerate progress in one direction, it multiplies your capacity across your life. When you prove to yourself that you can be consistent in one area, the confidence spills into others. For example, if you stay consistent with exercise for 6 months, you don't just gain physical strength, you gain the belief that you are capable of discipline. That belief carries into your work, your studies, and your relationships. Momentum in one domain fuels momentum in others. It creates a ripple effect that reshapes your identity and your results simultaneously. The beauty of momentum is that once it is built, it begins to work for you rather than against you. At first, you have to rely on discipline to push yourself forward. But with time, the habit gains its own energy. It becomes part of your routine, something you no longer debate with yourself about. You don't wake up every morning wondering if you should brush your teeth. It's automatic. That same automaticity is possible with exercise, reading, saving money, or building a business. The more you repeat the action, the less willpower it takes and the more natural it feels. This is momentum in action, the process of moving from forced discipline to a effortless continuation. Momentum also protects you from setbacks. When you have built consistency over time, missing a day or facing a failure does not stop your progress. It's like a train that has built up speed. Hitting a small obstacle may slow it down slightly, but it doesn't stop the movement entirely. Without momentum, every setback feels devastating because you don't yet have the force to carry you through. With momentum, setbacks become temporary pauses, not permanent endings. This resilience is one of the greatest benefits of consistency. It ensures that the effort you've invested continues to work for you even when life gets difficult. Another important truth about momentum is that it is not neutral. It can build in both positive and negative directions. Just as consistent effort builds progress, consistent neglect builds decline. Missing one workout, ignoring one responsibility, or breaking one promise to yourself may not seem like much in the moment, but repeated over time, it builds negative momentum. It becomes easier to skip, easier to excuse, and harder to restart. This is why being intentional about consistency matters so much, because momentum once established is difficult to reverse. You want it working in your favor, not against you. Momentum is also what separates those who start something from those who finish it. Many people begin with enthusiasm, but without consistency, their initial energy fades. Those who keep going, even when it feels slow, eventually reach a tipping point where their progress begins to accelerate. From the outside, it may look like they suddenly found success, but the truth is that their consistency created momentum that eventually made success inevitable. The overnight success is almost always the result of years of quiet, consistent effort finally reaching visible momentum. What makes momentum so powerful is that it shifts the question from, can I do this? To, how could I stop now? Once you've invested enough time and built enough rhythm, the idea of quitting feels unnatural. The energy of progress pulls you forward, and instead of struggling to start, you struggle to stop. That is the stage where goals turn into lifestyles and temporary discipline becomes permanent identity. So, the gift of consistency is not just the progress you make day by day. It is the unstoppable momentum you create, the force that makes growth self-sustaining. Once you experience this, you begin to understand why small, consistent steps are more powerful than rare bursts of effort. Because while effort starts the wheel, consistency keeps it turning, and momentum eventually makes it unstoppable. So when we step back and look at it all together, the lesson becomes clear: transformation is not instant, but it is inevitable when you give yourself to the process. Small actions may look insignificant today, yet they compound into lasting results. The identity you dream of is built brick by brick through consistent action, and the only way to sustain that identity is to focus on what matters most. With time, those repeated efforts create a momentum so powerful that nothing can easily stop you. 6 months may feel like a long time, but in truth, it is just a moment in the story of your life. And if you give that moment everything, if you stay consistent, even when no one is watching, you will look back and realize that you didn't just change your results, you changed yourself. Consistency is not about perfection, it is about persistence. It is about showing up today, tomorrow, and the day after, trusting that the future you want is being built with every step you take. The question you must ask yourself is simple: will you give yourself 6 months of unwavering consistency and allow the person you've always wanted to be to finally emerge? Because the truth is, everything can change, but only if you decide to stay consistent long enough to watch it happen.